So welcome to part 4 of my complete bow build series. I've got my arrow rest on, I added my stabilizer, I got the D-loop and Nox heads and everything sorted out. This bow is good to shoot, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's ready to go. I put about 20 shots through it just now into my target just to get a feel for it and enjoy my new bow, and the first few arrows out of your new bow, especially when you've worked on it yourself, are always pretty special. So I took a chance to just take some shots through it and let the strings kind of settle out within the cam tracks, especially the cables. And now is the time where you have to get to a little bit more of the fine details of the bow setup, which the big one is cam timing. So if you aren't familiar with cam timing, what that is ensuring that both of your cams are rotating perfectly as mirror images of each other. Now, every cam system has a slightly different definition of what in time means, but in general, I want you to think of it as though both cams are working in perfect synchronization and stopping at the exact same time, meaning that they are firing at the exact same time. To do this, you need a way of drawing your bow and holding it at full draw safely while you analyze it and look at it and are able to figure out what needs to be done to it. Obviously, you can't really look at the sides of your cams while you're at full draw, and I also recommend not just defaulting to having your buddy draw it and looking while he's at full draw, because the back end pressure that a human puts on a bow can really hide some of what we're trying to do here. This is a draw board I built when I was like 16 years old, and it is just still chugging away. It's awesome. All it is a 2x6, a meter stick, which I've cut to a certain length to make this a draw board, and if you're interested in that, I can make a video on how I did this. This is just like a plumbing flange and a trailer winch. This is all you need, and it is as good as anything you can buy commercially. I'm going to get this set up here so you can see what I'm doing, but basically I'm going to take my bow, put it in this system, draw it, bring it to full draw and lock it in, and then I'm going to look at each cam and see there are specific indicators on each cam which will tell you where they're at in their draw cycle. And our goal here is to figure out what adjustments need to be made, make them, and keep repeating this back and forth between the bow press and the draw board until we can clearly see that both cams are starting and stopping at the exact same point. So this whole system and process of drawing your bow with the only thing holding it back being a trailer winch can definitely be a little bit nerve-wracking. And you always got to be careful, but if you do it properly, there's no danger in this at all. So what I'm doing here is I've got everything cleared out of the way. I moved my vise out of the way, and on this pipe, which is essentially your hand, you're going to put the deepest part of your grip right in there, just like you would be holding your bow. And then you're going to hook in the winch. Now, depending on your setup, if you start to draw it and you can see that it's a little off balance, you can pop off your stabilizer, but we'll try this with it on. So then you can, if you're really nervous, you can lock that in. I usually don't, because it's just such a deep hook that's not going to slip out. And then I'm just going to go back, and until I get tension on it, I'm going to hold my hand here to make sure that the grip position doesn't change, and I'm just going to start turning this thing. You can see I've started to get tension, so now I can let go of it. And now is a good time, if you realize you need to make adjustments so that your bow is sitting straight, make the adjustments. That's how I want mine, right there. I need to lift it up a little bit so it's more like how I would shoot it. Once you get that tension, it just holds itself like that. And then you're going to draw your bow. Slowly but surely, watching until you get just about to the end. And when we get just about to the end, I'm going to lock in my trailer winch so that can't go anywhere. This is completely safe, and I'll show you what I'm looking at in terms of cam timing. So what I'm looking at here is where my cam is going to stop. So on each side, and again, every cam system is a little different, but in general, you're going to have some sort of post here which is going to finish drawing and contact that cable. So I have one there, and I have the same thing there. And I always stop just a little bit before the draw is complete so I can see if anything is crazy out of whack. Now I can see they're both pretty close here. So I'm going to make the next click on my winch setup here. Make sure it's locked in. Always check that before you let go. And I'm just going to watch as those two posts make their way to the cable. Lock that in. And do all of this so slowly and so carefully. And now I'll show you what I'm looking at here. I mean, this is almost perfect. So this is about half a click away from being at full draw. Full draw would mean that this post is contacting that cable. So I can see that the gap between them is about identical. And it's so close because I built these strings only a couple of days ago and I measured them to make sure they were perfect, but you have to verify this. So then I'm going to pop it into that last click and just verify that I have contact on both sides and that this is in fact perfectly timed. We got lucky here, but this won't always happen. What's normally going to happen is you're going to draw back and you're going to find one cam stop is touching the cable before the other one. So that would mean you need to make a timing adjustment. The timing adjustments that need to be made, I actually have a little chart right here which tells me so that I never forget. So if your top cam is not touching, you need to either lengthen the cable of the top cam or shorten the cable of the bottom cam. If your bottom cam is not touching, you need to either lengthen the cable of the bottom cam or shorten the cable of the top cam. Write that down somewhere. But when you're doing this, you're going to figure out which cable needs to be twisted. It's generally better to add twists than to remove, so it's better to shorten cables than to lengthen cables. And you're going to make adjustments by either adding a half a twist or a full twist at a time. I try not to do much more than that. You'd be shocked at what adding a half a twist does to fix your cam timing. When you add a twist, you're shortening the cable, and even just that half of a twist can move this a matter of a few millimeters. So it's a trial and error process. You're going to come back and look at this, see how much it needs to move, bring it back to the bow press, make that adjustment on whichever cable needs to go, and keep bringing it back and forth into the draw board until you see that you have absolutely perfect timing like we do here. So the first big question that's going to come up once you determine that you need to make an adjustment for your timing is which cable belongs to which cam. It can be really tricky to assess this. The best way to do it is just to guess, take one, make sure you make a clear note of which one that you've adjusted, add a full twist and go measure it again, and you'll very quickly know whether or not you made the right adjustment or whether or not you need to remove that twist and then add a twist to the other side, and you'll very quickly learn your bow. If you have a bow that has split yokes, which is like the Y cable that's on the top and bottom, that's really easy to tell because the side that does not have the yoke denotes the cam that cable is in control of. So if you need to make an adjustment to your bottom cam's cable, you're going to pick the cable where the Y is on the top and it's just a single portion of cable on the bottom cam. So if you have split yokes, it's really easy. If you don't, then just do a trial and error. It's so easy to just make an adjustment, check it, and back it out if you're wrong. So this is the natural point in the bow build where I'll discuss draw length as well. Now, it's hard for me to teach you how to change your draw length because every bow is going to be completely different. I'll show you what it looks like on my bow, but the best thing you can do is look at your owner's manual. It will have written in there clearly how to change your draw length, and it's really important that you set your draw length correctly. If you have a draw board, that's great because you can measure your old bow and see what your draw length is, and if that feels comfortable to you, then stick with that. The problem with just following the draw length markings on a bow is that they're not always accurate. In fact, they tend to run about ½ an inch long. So I shoot 30.5 inches. I set this bow to the peak draw length, which is 30.5 inches, and when I draw it on my draw board, it's actually 31. Now it's still shootable for me. It's a little long, but I'm gonna leave it for a little bit just to see if I can get used to that extra ½ inch, if it really hinders my shooting. If you can get an extra ½ inch draw length out of your setup, that's a tremendous increase in speed and power when compared to draw weight, right? A little increase in draw length means more than a little increase in draw weight in terms of power, but you don't want to be stretching yourself out. You want to have a nice crook to your elbow. You want it to be completely comfortable. You don't want to be extended, and you also don't want to be crunched up. If you want to actually measure your draw length, here's how I do it. You need 2 people for this, and I will get you to stand very relaxed and loose and stick both your arms up to the side, not stretching or extending, just very naturally. Stick both your arms up to the side with a closed fist, whichever one is your bow arm. So the arm that's gonna hold your bow, leave that one up, put the other one down. So then I'll scooch, pretend there's a wall right here. I'll scooch into a wall until my fist is just touching the wall, and then pretending that my head is on a swivel, perfectly turn. Again, not leaning at all. You want everything to be a nice straight line. And then have someone come measure from the corner of your mouth to the wall. And that'll be a really good assessment of your draw length. From there, you can maybe knock off 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch off that measurement to achieve that nice little bit of a crook in your arm. But like I say, the best thing you can do if you have a draw board is once you have a bow that's set to your perfect draw length and it's super comfortable for you, just make a mark on it. I have marks all over my draw board for my girlfriend, my friends, like long-term clients who I don't want to have to measure their draw length again, so I just write a line and their name. So that's a good way to keep track of your specific specs. So I'll show you what draw length looks like on my bow, but just remember it's going to be different on every bow. So draw length on my bow starts here. You can see the markings which indicate the draw length you're trying to achieve. It goes by 1/2 inch, so 29, 29.5, 30, 30.5. It's tough to see here, but there's a little pin right there which would indicate that this is set to 30.5. So the way you would adjust this is I'd loosen off all 3 of these, and then it's actually on the back side where this module, you would pick it up and adjust it so that pin on the other side goes into the right hole of the draw length you're trying to achieve. Now on Bowtech, they have this flip disc system. So there's a performance disc and the other side says comfort, which you would have seen in some of the earlier videos in this series. The performance setting makes the draw a little harsher and you hold a higher amount of weight for a little bit longer, but you do gain somewhere between 7 and 10 feet per second is what I found. When I flip it from performance to comfort and run it through a chronograph. So I don't really care about the draw cycle being super comfortable. It still is comfortable, it's just a little harsher. I move it to the performance side. Now, you're also probably going to have, this is called a draw stop. Every bow setup is going to look a little bit different on this front, but it's very important that when I adjust this to 30.5, that I also pull this out and move it to 30.5, because this sets your draw length, but this sets your back wall and where your bow actually stops. So it's crucial that you accurately set that up. So you got to make sure you do that to both sides. And then these bolts, once you have them set and your draw length is confirmed, these are really good ones to put blue Loctite on. I'll pull one out at a time, just a touch of blue Loctite and put it back in. And then of course you got to make sure that both sides are absolutely identical. So that's cam timing and draw length in a nutshell. It makes perfect sense to do these at the same time because they both require using the draw board. So now your draw length is set, your cams are timed, you've got your arrow rest on there, stabilizer. This bow is so close to being good to go. The next thing we're gonna do is install the sight. So tune into the next part of the series where I'm gonna show you how I like to install a bow sight.